They are pretty exciting. So I am completely full of a cold, as you can see here. But I thought some of these comments I saw were absolutely fantastic, and I wanted to share with you my thoughts seeing them. The one I got, which really made me prick up my ears and think, just answer that in one video. You don't have to do any more than that. Someone asked about redundancy. You know what? I'm not, because I literally wasn't ready to record this. I don't have the comment in front of me. That's terrible. Do I just move on? One thing I realized on the last video was that I actually ended up uploading the version which did not have any of the subtitles or the extra pictures on it, and no one seemed to care at all. So I realized, as long as I don't like do too much of the I will tell you about this in the picture, and actually chat as though you were here with me in the office, where, you know, if you're teaching somebody something, you're not forever getting another book out and showing them, like underlining everything. But it happens a lot on YouTube, and I understand. But it's a hell of a lot easier to make if I can just chat like this. Okay, so I found this comment, and it's from Roger C4196. Okay, hello Roger. He says, lovely video as always, and very appreciated. My pleasure. In terms of a topic for future videos, I'd like to suggest something prompted by that locator beacon that was in your dinghy bag. Right? So when I get in the dinghy, you know, one of the videos I was going to do was accidents surrounding the dinghy, or more like, what are the most common accidents on the boat, because it's kind of not what you'd expect. I don't mean that as like a thumbnail title, although clearly it could be, but it's falling down the companionway, right? That's the thing that hurts people the most. The other one is the dinghy and things to do with the dinghy. So my tactic with the dinghy is it's an 8-foot Walker Bay with the extra tube going around the side, and I'm not going to give you a picture of that. Maybe I do, maybe I don't. It's a lottery. But it's very, very stable. It's got a little electric outboard on the back of it. It's got a tall piece of UPVC pipe sticking up out of it, which I use to stabilize myself with to get on and off the boat. It's got like a pump inside it and a light, and it's very like utilitarian. But when I go to the boat, it's like 10-12 minutes to get out to the boat, and when I'm at the boat, it's then 10-12 minutes to get back, which is funny because it used to be 2 minutes from my old house. But there you go. The place where I've got the dinghy parked is just the most wonderful little dinghy park to be part of. The people that are down there are wonderful. So I don't want to give that up, but I'm setting out on an 8-foot boat on a 15-ish minute journey in Nova Scotia in the winter. It's below zero, and that bay opens directly into the Atlantic. Granted, it's just a notch through the islands, but it's like, you don't just bugger off in an 8-foot boat without telling everybody what's going on. So I get my life jacket on, and it's got my AIS in. So in the event of me falling off the dinghy, the AIS is going to start going off. The Coast Guard will know that that's going off if nobody nearby does. If it was yacht club season, maybe some people there would know, but that's good. I've got my personal locator beacon in there, which is going to immediately ping Halifax, and Halifax is going to be onto local Coast Guard and the police and what have you. I have my phone, which my Samsung phone is waterproof. In fact, this evening I'm going to be, you see it's all cracked on the front here. I've got a new chassis and glass, and being the practical people that we are, you can get these apart by following the instructions given by 12-year-olds on YouTube, and get it apart, get the back off, and then we're going to be replacing all the body. Everything from the inside is going to swap over. It's the only way of getting a new waterproof joint on the screen, and we're going to be replacing the port at the bottom here, because this thing's like $600. It's fantastic for filming, and it's waterproof. And so as long as it doesn't fall out of the bag that it's in, because that bag's on my back, I can call for help. I was once involved in a rescue off Newfoundland where the lads there basically saved themselves with mobile phones. They're in the water off a jet ski. They've been jumping through a hole in an iceberg on jet skis in t-shirts and shorts in October. It's about the most Newfoundland story you can possibly imagine. And I think what happened, the bottom of the jet ski had got cracked. The guy was a DJ in St. John's, just nearby, and the bottom of the jet ski got cracked, and then it was taking on water. So that's their personal situation. That's what's going on. For us, we have just sailed up from Nova Scotia. We're rounding the point there and coming back into Portugal Cove, is it called up there? And we're coming in the 60-foot boat Challenger, and we're hearing this call going out saying that the Coast Guard has got a call. These lads phoned for help from these two lads who are in the water, described the situation, and they needed help. So there was only us and a ferry in the area. So the ferry started going up and down the coast. It's getting darker and darker. I said, we'll stand on and help. But they heard sailing boat, like, yeah, whatever. But it's like, in this boat, it's like, here we go. Here goes sailing. So suddenly we're doing like 12 knots towards them, and came into the area. And it was Ken, again, I was chatting about on the last one. Ken had a torch out, one of those Energizer, like, rigid hard torches they have, very good for on your belt when sailing. And he was like waving it, and I said, what are you doing, buddy? He's like, well, maybe they'll see it if they're in the water. I'm like, dude, there's like, there's like miles to search. We've just arrived, and it's not even dark yet. Like, how are they going to possibly, what's that? Oh Jesus, the light in the water. It was that. they had the flashlight on their phone on and were waving it. And later we heard they had been accessing YouTube and getting instructions on how to turn over an inverted jet ski, like on your own in difficult situations. So they saved themselves. They phoned for help. They were visually signaled, and they tried to self-help themselves with one of these. So this is a brilliant piece of equipment to go in my bag. So today's video is about redundancy, because I kind of have to do this all the time, right? A lot of stuff that I like doing is solo. So my solo sailing is on 60 and 80-foot boats, and at the moment I'd have probably like 100,000 miles solo on boats of that size. On the Maxi, there's no picture of that here, I should get one. The Maxi, I've got like, I don't know, maybe like 4,000 or 5,000 miles so far. That's 80 foot. So the seamanship that I engage in is I understand different from a lot of other people's, and it only comes about for me because I had a commercial charter company which had these boats, and we'd be delivering them to events that we were doing. And when I started the company, I thought that people were going to be joining me for those deliveries as frequently as they'd be doing the races. But the reality is, people just want to do the races. They see a race boat, they think racing, and why would you want to be on a race boat at sea? But they forget this is an amazing boat. These are boats that are designed to go into the Southern Ocean. So in terms of witnessing what's possible in sailing, it's like, this is it. Now, it can get comfier inside and everything else, but you'll never get a better sailing boat. And that's what they're all about. And the 80-footer came into that realm just around COVID, just after COVID started, with the idea of doing a big round the world race. And then our division was cancelled. And it was kind of a bit like pass the parcel. It's like, oh, okay, so we got this. So I managed to, people that had booked with that company as it went into COVID, some of them wanted to still go sailing. So I did their sailing trips on the 80-footer. So amongst all of that, there ended up being this thought that it was going to be always crewed. I didn't deliberately step into this. I had done solo around the world on a 60-foot boat, but that's a very unusual pursuit. But suddenly it became, there are no people to help deliver the boat to the regatta, but there are people at the regatta. So you're like, okay, well, I'll just take it on my own then. I have had this experience on the 60-footer. And so started years of delivering, Challenger particularly, thousands and thousands of miles solo. And then when we got the 80-footer, it was like, we just did the same thing, right? So it's like this very bizarre situation where I have this 80-foot boat, but I am on my own. So in terms of like redundancy, everything that I admire about those boats, everything that is the highest plaudit in sailing, for me, is based on people's ability to problem solve, to overcome personal hardship, whether it be physical or emotional or whatever, or situational. What's going on can be overwhelming, and everything that keeps me alive in the stuff that I engage in. Even just going on the dinghy from the dock out to the boat, which is 15 minutes. Dinghy, statistically, one of the most likely things. I have slipped down the companionway on the open 60. I slid down it in the about dusk, and I woke up and it was dark. Now I was at 46 north, so it's it's not like the tropics where it's like, and 1 minute later, which I've experienced. This was like, and 30 minutes later. Yeah. So I'm very, very, very aware all the time of redundancy. It's also one of the things that totally petrifies me about sailing that I do, because I think it's the thing that I can end up thinking that I've worked it out, end up believing that either I've got all the bases covered, or that somehow I'm the one it's not going to happen to. When you've got a lot of miles and you've got a lot of experience and you've been through a lot of things in any job, in any, if you're loading containers on a ship, if you're, a seismologist, name anything, you're in the field doing whatever it is for a while. First, we all have that bit where we realize like we're adults and we're in charge. I can remember being in the South China Sea, sailing 104-foot, 104-year-old big class yacht called Merry Maid through the South China Sea, which is not a dark place to be at night. They do bright light fishing, and there are fishermen literally with like sunglasses on these boats with, these days, hundreds and hundreds, probably thousands of LEDs burning. But back in the day was like bulbs this size, the most surreal thing. They can see them from space, right? So there's hundreds of those around. There's then people in like rattan coracles who are out jigging for squid. They're out in their hundreds, and a lot of them are press ganged onto the boat. There are the boats that are the motherships for the rattan coracles, which have 10 or 12 of them out at once, right? Point being, as we went through this maelstrom of boats in the middle of the night on this 12 million euro 100-foot boat that I was the captain of with a small crew on board, one of them starts following us, and as he's following us, we start to realize, now I've been through the South China Sea many times, like lights out, stop transmitting on the AIS, steer by visual only, right? And move away from them. But with radar, they can still pick you out if they're smart, right? And they're just very, very good at operating in that kind of environment. So he was still there. He's about 2 miles away. Latterly, I realized most of the time they're just interested. It's a very unusual boat to be going past, but you can start to get into this, like, are we being pursued, or are they just interested, or what's going on? And on that night, I was like, I'm not very happy about this situation, And then the engine started coughing and coughing and coughing. And my father had passed away about 2 years before. And I went down and opened the big doors that opened up this Perkins Sabre engine that was kind of like hiccuping because the secondary fuel filter was blocking up. And I realized I can't call my dad to help me, which is a funny thing for a 35-year-old man who's already sailed twice around the world to think. But I did sail twice around the world with my dad on the other end of the line, to the point that I can remember my dad when I was in the Southern Ocean, and the engine wouldn't start. And I'm pretty good with engines. It just wouldn't start. I did phone them, but I phoned them just to say, hey, like, this is probably gonna be on the news, but don't like freak out. I'm totally fine. Just, we're gonna tell this. Well, it's not how it went, because Daddy-O, who had been a brilliant mechanic his entire working life, and then had succumbed to brain cancer and had serious operations, and there's just never quite the same after that stuff for some people. And he didn't have that much to add. He couldn't be like, hey, check this and check that and check the other. He said, tell me what's going on. So I told him everything, and he said, it sounds to me like it wants to start. I thought, well, thank you very much for that, Father. And I put the phone down, and at that time I was about 1,000 miles south of Western Australia, and I'm in this open 60, and I'm way behind in the race that I'm in. And the solar panels, we didn't have any money to buy new solar panels, so they're like on their last legs. They're 6 years old, and the batteries, we just didn't change them. I just don't think it crossed our minds. We had so little time, so little money to get the boat ready. 8 weeks to get it ready for this race, and the batteries were going pooched, because when you go from South Africa to Wellington, you go far south, right? So it was so cold that the batteries, then the chemistry in the battery wasn't working even as well as it was meant to. And I was meant to get to Wellington, I think, in about 32 days, something like that. I ended up taking 40. And so my and I was charging like all the time, so the diesel was running out much quicker than it was. I think I did the crossing. I did the final crossing of the Tasman Sea, and then got stuck in. There's a video of me somewhere on YouTube called CSM in the Cook Straits, and it's me beating into the Cook Strait in very heavy conditions. Well, that night I ran out of diesel about 100 miles from Wellington and just got myself to Wellington, and that was that. Right, not 100 miles. That's 10 miles. I'm getting completely. It's a very little country. I think about it on the chart. It's like, no, I didn't beat through there. That the last 100 miles was the hard bit. The last 10 miles was the bit without fuel. But getting in there, yeah, it's one of those things that I was last in the race, but I was most proud of that performance. Well, at this moment, 1,000 miles south of Western Australia, as the lights are going down, I've got no lights on the boat. The boat's still racing through the darkness. We've still got this mainsail, which is about 1,600 square foot, the mainsail, plus, I don't know, probably another 500-600 up front, depending on what sail I've got up. We're doing like 10, 12, 14 knots all the time. There's no power. There's so low power that the autopilot's running on like 12. It should run, minimum voltage on that should be like 12 volt system. It shouldn't go below 12.2, maybe 12. It's certainly not when you consider that a charging voltage should be like 14.4. It should be in the 13s. 12.8 is still full. 12.6 is, half full, and 12.4 is getting towards empty. When you getting down towards where you start charging at 50%, 11.8 is getting to a point where you can start to do serious damage to the battery chemistry. So I'm down at 10 point something. 8D batteries, how good they are. They keep going in some fashion. But Daddy-O says to me, Peter, my father, says it wants to start. And I was like, it wants to start what? And then I realized what he was saying is that everything that you've described, and I know what I'm talking about, is correct. So it's not anything to do with the engine, which is a little bit like, it's like Yoda. And what was the truth of the thing was that somebody had added a rubber ball onto the hose that went from the fuel can, because they have like, you swap in the fuel cans like you would on an outboard in a dinghy. That's how we change them at sea. When you're solo and you don't have it all in tanks, you have it movable. So we've got that ball in there, and the ball has become so hardened by the cold that the valves inside it had gone sticky and they weren't allowing proper fuel flow. And that's what it was. He was right. The engine did want to start. It's the flipping ball over here, and it took me about 3 minutes to work it out. Engine started up and off we went. That was in my mind, being chased by pirates, I don't know what, in the South China Sea, as I opened the doors of this Perkins Sabre engine, and I realized I can't phone him. Like, it's not possible. He's passed away in between. These are the bits where you realize, like, do I know what I'm doing here or not? Because everybody that gets into any industry, there's always that bit where there's the early mastery as you climb Mount Stupid. And I didn't call it that. Okay. Let's be very careful. Mount Stupid is part of that. What's it? I was thinking the other day about Bader-Meinhof syndrome. It's not that, is it? It's called, I don't know what it is. All right, we'll have to do some editing. I'll have to edit in what the word is. These guys came up with this, like the development of mastery, that first of all, you increase in confidence over time, and then you get to the top of that first kind of mound, that's Mount Stupid, and then something happens, either some awareness opens up or some accident befalls you or people around you, which then you lose confidence and your confidence slumps. But at that point, you learn a very important thing about your craft, your kung fu, and then your confidence starts to increase again, but now with certainty behind it and with learning behind it. For me, with the stuff I do, my concern is what's at the top of the second hill, because I think what is up there is complacency. I think it's where you're so used to, like, it literally is a utility room where you can hear the pump going. You get so used to winning in everything that you apply yourself to in your given area that you stop giving it the energy that you always gave it. You know, like the stereotypical martial arts master is like some 90-year-old guy who's hunched over on the way into the dojo, but then as soon as he hits the mat, he's fluid and everything else. There is a kind of personality based fluidity and ease and economy of motion in your chosen area of craftsmanship or work or application that does start to get easier the more you get into something. You know, if a giant tennis court size sail is going nuts in front of me, and when I'm on my own, I'm flinching away from it because I don't want to get hit by a sheet or something's going on, but I'm not like freaking out. I am feeling the trapdoor feeling of the fact of like how much stress is on the rig, what's going to happen after this, what's else going to break, but I'm not like fearful of it, but it would be perhaps a life-changing occurrence for somebody else, right? So I'm able to fluidly go through it, but am I still putting in the reps? Is the 90-year-old guy like actually down, like doing his practice every morning and the stuff he used to do? No. So how good would he be in like a long-term fight after a few fluid motions? What happens if this becomes a all-out brutal war and he needs to like, I don't think the 90-year-old guy can actually do it. So is he a martial arts master? Well, unless there's actual like magical powers in kung fu, no, he's not, is he? And that's the kind of thing with sailing, is that you can end up with people that stand on the deck, and whilst there was a point where they were brilliant at it, that moment might have passed because a lot of the skill set with sailing is easily corroded by lack of use, right? The awareness of the boom, we've been talking a lot about preventers, the awareness of where it is, the awareness of where I don't think I'll ever lose the awareness of like where the boat is under me. No, that's when people say people don't forget how to ride a bicycle, because you always know what that feeling is and what's the corresponding act that goes with it. The same with the boat when it's going downwind. I will always know if it's just about to drive. If that on my deathbed, they'll get me back up if the hospital jibes or whatever it is. Hopefully not. I don't want to be entombed in a green blanket. That's not a good way to go. So my greatest concern is that having scaled Mount Stupid in the early part of my youth on multiple occasions, it's more of a kind of like a ridgeback that you go along as a teenager and 20-year-old or something. Is like, oh, I'm really good. Oh, no, I'm getting better. This is it. I'm on my way. No, I'm not. It's just up and down until there is, yes, a fluidity to it. But then there's a worry that then you don't do the reps. You don't deal with the redundancies that you need to have to be as good as you ever were. You know, that you have the knowledge residing in the back of your head, that you haven't forgotten it. It could be that you haven't been at the paper chart table for years, and if the GPS goes down and you've got all this stuff off to one side, is that actually useful to you if you only ever did a evening class? You haven't like really brought it on board for yourself. If you're a naval navigator, you're not going to like readily forget how to do a 3-point fix. But if it's not something you ever really, really used, having all those charts there might just be a bit of a emotional raft rather than actually something useful, you know? I think that I know less about tall ship rigging now than I did. You know, tall ship rigging is Underhill is basically the go-to for that. I've got a couple of his books here. This is Rigs and Rigging, but there's another one called Masting, which is the correct verbiage for putting a rig into a boat. This one is his kind of collection of tales and images of bygone era of sailing. So Underhill is like the source, but I was very lucky when I first went to sea that the ship I was sailing on had a brilliant master called Greg Tonlinson, who later went on to skip a Lewin 2 in Australia. I worked from there as well until I lost contact. And a guy called Doug Watson was on board. Doug Watson had been on tall ships since he was like a young teenager, and I met him in his mid-20s. I was 19 or so, and he was just about as close as you get to a shellback in a modern... I don't think he'd ever worn shoes. He's got like curly blonde Aussie hair, wore nothing but like a collarless shirt and a jumper and some old jeans the entire time I ever knew him. We could climb the forestay on a 140-foot brigantine to the masthead, across the Triatic and back down the backstay in, I think it was it 3 minutes? He went up the forestay by gripping it with his big toe and his other toes over to one side. So there was a real grip, so you could then hang back. You didn't have to have all of that pulled in up against the thing. So I was learning from him. He could break paracord in his hands, which I've never been able to do. He was a funny guy and amazingly knowledgeable. And I landed in a situation where I had this incredible mentors. So, and also with that Steve Burton, who was a submariner in the British Navy who'd gone on to become a ocean master instructor, and he was the chief mate. Good Lord, it was an amazing band of people. The bosun on that boat, this is Outward Bound in Hong Kong in 1996, 97, Berman, the bosun, went on to be the captain of Outward Bound's next yacht, a 67-foot yacht, and has probably skippered more professional yacht miles than most other people in that part of the world. Berman's done thousands of miles in charge of that boat. He's got a lot of miles, and then all the tool ship stuff beforehand. Amazing cadre of people that I was learning from, and I had these role models for what I might aspire to be one day. But I don't work with any people like that anymore, so I don't have that. So everything I do every day is to get round to the point of this thing about redundancy. You better have another plan for what you're doing after this, because this could go on for a while. Everything I do, I have to make sure that I'm like counting all the steps beforehand and taking all the risks and working it back and then starting out from there. I would say that even in thinking to prepare this chat with you, I realized I could do a lot more to apply the things that I do in sailing to my everyday life. That the redundant is getting better. I've kind of been through divorce and I've moved countries and all sorts of things have happened to me in my life. So really it was almost like a clean start for me at the beginning of COVID, bankruptcy of the old company, everything. And it's like all the redundancies that I had built up until I was 45 or so just disappeared. I'm not too worried about it because we are already building back with a better plan, but I see that they're not in place yet in the way that they might be. My concern with going onto the boat is, am I still staying on top of the knowledge I have, on top of the equipment that I have, or am I just in this kind of like old man kung fu kind of thing where it's just like, yeah, I know what I'm doing until you whoop over the side? Am I running against the statistics the entire time that more miles are not actually some new positive for me, but actually just kind of tracer fire leading me? It's like, oh, here we go, I'm just going to catch up with the miles here, and then because I get so complacent about things, then my redundancies wear out. I would say that it's very true to say that when I go sailing on a boat, I am looking at I think my greatest redundancy is knowledge, and it's the knowledge that my father has imparted to me as a mechanic. Reading all of these non-fiction sailing books are just, even for me, I started the Mariners Library Project like 2 or 3 years ago, and I got to say I was pretty burnt out with sailing after COVID just taking away everything I'd worked towards. But rereading all these books and so many new ones, I've got a new thrill and excitement about going sailing, and then realizing that the remnants of the company could be an amazing platform to use in this setting, so we can all learn together. But the format is I will go and do it on my own because I know the complications of trying to get people onto the boats. We'll do a couple of regattas each year for sponsors on Patreon, but I'm not running a commercial charter company anymore. I'm going to make content about my sailing so I can teach you about safety, and part of that is redundancy. The boat as it is right now, I feel like I've used up all the redundancies. I know that when we're doing the Newport Bermuda race, there was an oil leak on the main engine, and we don't have a generator in that boat. So every time the engine was running, it was dripping oil in the bilge. And at the end, I picked up the bilge, and really it was getting to a point where very much further, and it would have started slopping out from under the bilge, which is not that uncommon a thing to happen on a race boat, that the bilge water gets out the bilge. But if there's oil in it, it's like, oh, it's a whole other level of problem, right? And the safety equipment has to be at the highest levels and service and everything else. You can't get into races like the Newport Bermuda race. A lot of safety stuff, but the things that I'd have in place, like tools, like I think that one of the, after information, and I'll say a bit about that, like you can't suddenly like have a dad that teaches you mechanics if that's not how it goes. They teach you something else. You can't suddenly have had an experience where you work with a tall ship rigger, but you can read a book and then have it with you, or have it on a waterproof format, or you can get a hang on, can I even here we go. Hello, what's in here? You can even have, oh, am I going to be caught out here? No, I was so cocky, wasn't I was so sure. Have a hard drive with all of the stuff that you need to be able to run star fixes, Bowditch, Underhill, yes, Marlowe specs, the diagrams for the winches, the scantlings for the boat, the blah, 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 blah. It's all in here with the adapter to go into my waterproof phone or the tablet I'm recording this on. And they all fit into here. This floats into here. This floats. And everything is waterproof and is there and is carried with me the whole time. So in the event that I was in the dinghy, I could send out all these beacons and phone and what have you. I'd have a torch because I've got this. I'd have the ability to give somebody my GPS location because of that. I could keep myself, I could watch pictures of my family if I needed to increase my will to live, which we've discussed on the Mariner podcast, which is anywhere that you get podcasts. That's got 120 odd episodes or something. If you're interested in this kind of stuff, that the will to live in a survival situation is almost the most important thing, right? But again, I think of myself in terms of like the redundancies I have of information about life rafts and what have you. One of the books that we went through on the Mariner podcast over, I think, like 20 episodes was a safety at sea book, and I just read parts of it and then just chatted away about the things that brought up for me. As you can see, I don't mind doing that. So yeah, it's been very interesting for me to reflect a little bit on redundancy and think knowledge is the first one. After that, make sure you've got it with you somehow, right? And don't think it's just about books. The next thing is tools. But tools in many senses. My little boy's 3 now, and when he can't do something, I immediately try and teach him, like, get the right tool. I said to him the other day, we're outside, and for the first time ever, he said, I'm scared of the dark. And I said, well, what's the tool that solves that problem? And he said, the flashlight. I said, yeah, go and get it off the hook where we keep it. Because I've already shown him that there's a tool that fixes the dark, because when stuff goes under the counters in the kitchen, I've shown him to get the torch and go down and then get a long, thin metal tool, which he says to me, I need a long, thin metal tool, which means get the spatula and then we can get the things out. So he's problem solving, right? So he did something like that the other day as well. What was it? I can't remember now. I still can't remember the name of that study, which was looking at confidence and accents and everything else. I just list them at the end, all the things I couldn't think of. Then there's only one editing thing. You stay to the end, and it's all the stuff I can remember. I'll just list it out. One editing point. But when I then said to him in this new novel situation, oh, you're scared of the dark. What's the tool? Keyword, what's the tool to solve this problem? He already knew what the answer was to that, and he felt better. So I would say that you've got awareness of the fact that redundancy is required, and then knowledge that you have or can hold with you, which is much better these days because of these things, much better. And those Newfoundlanders just proving that to us. And then after that, tools, and looking at that not just as like tools in a toolbox, but like how can everything be used as a tool. I found I have this really odd thing that I do when I'm fixing stuff. Like I'll know exactly what it is that's the right tool to do the job, right? To specialist tools taking apart DPA pumps on diesel engines, to automatic transmissions, to hydraulic systems on boats, to rigging, to da-da-da-da. Each one of these things is part of the concerns of a sailor. And they all have specialist tools. And after a while, you start to like understand how tooling works and how to manipulate and operate tools and how galling works and friction works and all that stuff. Okay, right. So with specialist tools, the thing is that you get a feeling for like how tooling works. You get a feeling for how to solve problems of leverage and access and observation. Can I get my phone and then put the camera on and put it up into a tight place and then get it back out? These days I can use Google Lens to like identify what a thing is. I can have the online user manual for this thing in my hands in like 5 seconds by taking a picture of it with Google Lens. When has that ever been previous? This is a tool. The glasses. So I have a pair of glasses here, which you can see have got one lens in and one lens out, right? I was on the boat the other day. I might splice in here the piece of footage because I've discounted all the rest of that footage, but maybe I've still got it. If I've got it, I'll stick it in here now of me learning this trick. My eyes have been going for a while because I'm 47. I'd say like probably 4 years ago, they started getting weaker. And I think what a lot of people do is you go and get a pair of readers, right? So I got some and they were like 1.25s, and I've been up and down for years. I think not really realizing how much time's going past with this issue. I should go to an optometrist and get it sorted out. But over time, learning how to deal with this, what tools I have available to use it. So a pair of readers, not too complex. But I found that after a while, man, they really started to hurt. And then I started to realize I've always had a bit of a lazy eye on one side. And when I was born, the ligaments in the back of my eyes weren't connected properly, which is not an uncommon thing for little ones. Their eyes are often cross-eyed to begin with, little ones, you know, right? And then they kind of straighten up. Well, they don't straighten up, and it's not an uncommon operation to go in. They fix the ligaments in the back of the eye. That's how it was explained to me. Please, in the comments, if I would learn about myself if someone did share that with me. So, but what it meant is that because I had first operation at 4 months and the second one at 4 years, my eyes did not develop with stereoscopic vision. So I use one eye or the other. I was always told I couldn't be a pilot. And then latterly, I understood from my brother-in-law that worked for Westfield Helicopters that they were looking for people with exactly this, because then you could put a tactical monocular for flying an Apache over one eyeball and then use one for driving the helicopter and the other one for looking at something that's up close. So I've always had the concept in the back of my head that I can use one eye or the other, and that in some circumstances that could be useful. So I recently looked at the fact that I could get my eyes lasered, but I had not really understood that as your eyes get older, the issue then is like, I understand moving the lenses. And so what they end up doing is they will give one eye like a short range capacity and the other one a long range capacity, and you have to learn to deal with it. So I'd already started to think, oh, well, then I need to work out which one of my eyes is more suited to close-up work and which is better for long-range vision. And then one day I cracked the top of my glasses, put them on, the lens fell out, and I immediately had the answer because I could see perfectly through this eye, and this one didn't need anything and was great at long distance, and it felt immediately correct to do it like that. And I've probably been doing that for a while, which is why this eye has been getting more and more lazy, because it's been doing less and less of the work. Because with reading tasks that I have to do, I put on glasses and I make this eye continue to do all the hard work. I've got like an eager beaver eye and a lazy eye. This one just wants to go to bed. This one's like a chipmunk on cocaine. So the point for me then was that at the moment I realized, like, oh, I've got my glasses. This tool now does exactly what I need it to do. It's training this eye to work up close, and then I'll get this eye lasered. Clearly, I should buy a pair of glasses that I can get with a frame that will take a prescription and a non-prescription lens, and then I can have it so it looks the same. But if you're an optometrist, please weigh in on this. But you know what? Don't have headaches. My eyes getting less lazy. I'm now feeling a lot more confident about my vision, because if you've started to lose your vision, you know what it's like. You start going like, I had one night I was trying to get the put new air pressure in the tires on the Land Rover, and it was a new vehicle to me, and I was checking inside the door jamb to make sure like what the pressures are, right? And I looked and I realized, hey, hang on, one of these has got a 3 at the front and one's got a 4. Like the difference between the pressures on the front and the back is 10 psi different, where normally I just put a 36 all round and call it a day, right? And I tell you now, the answer is 33 at the front and 42 at the back, right? But I thought, I want to know what the bloody answer is here. How do I solve this problem right here, right now, with the tools I have? And I will often do that, is try and solve problems with the tools that are to hand, so I get smarter at like what's around me. And in the end, the phone could be used to do whatever, or I could go and get, if I can get the bottom of this glass and try and solve it that way, couldn't I? distance might help, like better lighting. All of these are ways of solving problems. And I managed to work out in the end what it was. But I started to now, in the last week since I started wearing broken glasses, I realize I'm coming to things, I can immediately see what's going on. And, that's a huge thing, because to lose the tool of my eyes, to not be able to fall back on good vision, is very problematic. To be on a boat at sea, and one of your redundancy is that you have to have glasses. That's something that, you need to have that right at the top, because not being able to solve a problem because you can't see it is a massive issue. So I think maybe if I have a title which is Redundancy on Boats at Sea, then the concept might be that I'm going to give you a list of things that you should have on the boat. I don't think that's the right place to start this discussion. We can have this discussion for over a number of episodes of this, but it takes me 20 episodes to read one RYA book on safety. You can imagine how this goes. But the thing I want to try and underline is that, firstly, we have to understand the greatest fear for people who are getting better and better and better at something is complacency. And redundancy is the thing that saves you from your complacency. For someone who's been doing something for so long, you can actually corrode your skill set and corrode your attitude and not be putting in the daily reps. So you are a bit like the Kung Fu master, that yes, you can step out with incredible fluidity at particular moments, but come the long slog, you're useless, right? I need to get all of my redundancies built back into the boat. I need to make sure that I got this issue with my tooth, right? That needs to have that removed and get an implant put in so that I can move forward with this. At the moment, it makes me very nervous to think, what happens if this starts to get infected or something when I'm at sea? That's a massive problem. What's my redundant? I want to reduce the number of redundancies that I have to carry, because I reduce the number of possible problems, right? It's why we have boats now. A lot of race boats will have a forestay, which has nothing to do with the sails that are hoisted up and down inside of it. We moved away from both the windage of the sails rolled up on the stay, but also the fact that if the sail interacts with the stay in which the stay gets broken, then you lose both the stay and the mast and the sail. Where if there's just a sail-based problem, then the sail might be lost. Indeed, the halyard lock breaks, it all goes over the side, whatever happens, but the forestay is not part of the schmozzle, right? So these things, I think, I want to reduce. I have already reduced on the boat that I have and the sailing that I do, the number of things that problems I'm trying to solve to the minimum. And then I have the medical kit, which is the thing that keeps me alive, the toolkit and my understanding of how to use tools about me, and the attitude, which is the kind of what if attitude all the time. What if this happens? What if this happens? I've told the story many times of getting into that flooding situation at the Atlantic. And it was only because I had a what if plan already worked out in my head that, there's footage of me, I think at the beginning of this video, like in deep water. That water's already gone down from my mid thigh. When I'm wading around in that, right, it's gone from here to down here somewhere, because I came into the boat, saw all that water in there, and knew that I needed to go to the ballast tank inlet, the things that fill and empty the ballast tanks on a race boat, whiz off the pipes, so it was nothing to do with the tanks at the back anymore, and just put them to suck, and they would suck everything out the cabin. I worked out that solution on a day in the it was off of it was in Bass Strait. It was in Bass Strait. It was I was stopped basically. I can't remember what it was. There was good wind all the way through there. For some reason, it was windless, and I started having a thought that what about if I went aground? If I went aground, because it was the first time I was coming back into land, having been at sea for so long, what would be there? And it was like, well, you might damage the boat. You have a flooding incident. How'd you get it? I had bilge pumps, but the batteries can only power them for so long. And the little engine that's on there is like, in the end, if the water's coming up, the engine's off, the batteries are off, the pumps are then off. And I realized, by continuing to sail the boat, I could take off these pipes to the scoops, and then it would empty the boat. So I'd solved the problem. The thing happened to me in the North Atlantic, and so it was like 6 months earlier and 10,000 miles away, 12,000 miles away, and suddenly it came back, because I'm forever playing what if. I'm forever looking at the tools I have around me. I'm always trying to make sure that if my complacency gets the better of me, that I've already stacked the odds in my favor by decisions I've made with a skill set that I realize, and an awareness set, which I realize is corroding. and I actively engage in trying to learn new things as often as possible and take the risk of this kind of communication, because obviously, look, I'm here, it's the end of the evening, I'm not feeling great, I want to chat about this kind of thing because it's come up. You guys might be like, God, this guy, what a wanker, right? Or you might be like, oh, this is fantastic. And I like take a risk when I put it out there. From the bit of like market research I've done, I think this format works. It's cool. I'm not going to do loads of editing on these because it just means you end up thinking, oh, to make one video is 3 days, or I can make 3 videos. So we'll do things that I have forgotten at the end. That's a great way of getting people to the end. Maybe, I don't know. I should do a call to action, which says, go and have a look at Patreon. There's lots more stuff happening there, but I have been out of commission for a couple of weeks, but lots of good things happening there. I think because the way the YouTube's going, the way that Patreon's going, I don't have to necessarily look at being in work when I'm not sailing at the moment, but we need to grow Patreon. We need to grow YouTube, do what you can to help with that. And if you want to go sailing with me, I'm going to do the Fastnet race, the Middle Sea race, and the next Newport Bermuda race on the 80-footer. There's 6 people on the Fastnet. There's five or six people on the Middle Sea race. There's no one on the Newport Bermuda yet. So go over to Patreon, have a look at that. It's a sponsor level, gives you access to doing that. I'm not running a commercial charter business anymore. The money that comes from that is going to go directly into the boat. And the first thing we're going to be buying with the money for the first race is new mainsail, new jib, and some new running lines on deck. So we're going to have a beautiful boat for the season. There's probably enough money in that as well to buy a wrap for the boat, which would be, if you haven't looked at coloring your boat, getting the hull painted is very expensive. These days we vinyl wrap them. So we'll show you how to do a vinyl wrap on a big boat if we get there. But redundancy, let's start from here. I'd love to see what you've got to throw back from this. My voice is getting very dry and cracked, so I can't really go on. But what's your, there's going to be people here who are first responders, who are military, who have been involved in all sorts of crazy situations. Share it. My demographics tell me that pretty much everybody watching me now, I think it's 2% of women, which, thank you very much. I hope that herein lies a place where you can learn about sailing. And it's not as bloody male orientated and frankly sexist as most of the rest of sailing is. And I say that having been in most of the hoity-toity yacht clubs around the world. It makes me gag sometimes, but chaps, every watch leader I've had going around the world, pretty much woman. There's an untapped resource of leadership right there, but let's not get into it. But the other 98% of folks is every possible variety of middle-aged man you're likely to get, which means that I'm give or take the same as you. So I'm here to answer your questions on sailing and subjects connected to sailing. You can connect with me on Patreon. We can go more in depth there. But I want to be able to provide you with a raft of different things here, which will develop your sailing interests and your safety on the ocean and your ability to make it safe and make it fun for the people that you choose to take with you, which after, what we saw at 20, 27, 37, 47, after 30 years and 320,000 miles, 250,000 miles as captain, sailing is the best. It's the best cure for anxiety and what ails too many people these days is go out, drop the facade, let's see who you really are. This is where the rubber meets the road. That's what sailing's about, and problem solving and developing things that you can then take back into everyday life that are positive and improve your communication and your interpersonal skills, your leadership skills. That's what sailing's about for me. So that means that the sphere of what we can talk about is as voluminous as the Mariner's Library behind me, which is double stacked with books and over here and over here and here. So that's what I'm here for. I hope the little chit chat about redundancy opened up conversation, and I'm happy to come back to it with some details later on. But for now, wherever you are and whatever you're doing, I hope you are safe and sound, and I look forward to speaking to you in the next one. Cheers.